Hey everybody, I'm Lois and this is my daughter Faith and this is our birth story. That morning, which was a Friday morning, I went in for my 41 week appointment. I did have her strip my membrane that morning. So that was at 9:30. We got home and I put on my kind of grabby clothes. So I went outside and I literally squatted and lunged and did every sort of yoga move you can do while gardening outside for a good 3 hours. I was pulling up tomato plants, I was whacking down my mint bushes, I was trimming my sage. I was really being busy and I was squatting, purposefully squatting and lunging and just doing what I can to kind of open up my pelvis and just encourage baby to drop. Around lunchtime, I came inside and I decided to just go take a quick shower, clean off. I was dirty from working in the garden. So I did that and then I had a light lunch and laid down and then my back started hurting. So at about 4 o'clock, I got in a bath and my contractions were very different than my pregnancy with RJ. So with RJ, my contractions were immediately intense. Like there was no question about them. They radiated, instead of from front to back, they radiated kind of from my diaphragm down to my pelvic bone, but just very hard and very intense. And this time around, I was laying in the bathtub and I could feel the tightening, I could feel the contractions, but I wasn't catching my breath. I wasn't in intense pain. Like I could talk to my husband during a contraction. And I did it several times because he would come in and he's like, how far away are your contractions? And I said, well, they're anywhere from 7 to 3 minutes. There was no pattern to them yet. And he said, okay, well, it's 4:30 right now, and knowing how fast your birth went with RJ, which by the way, from the time I felt labor to the time that RJ was born was 6 hours. So based off of that and us being a good hour from our hospital, let's just go to the hospital. And I thought, okay, I really don't want to, because if I get there and I'm not in true labor, I really don't want to drive the hour back home in rush hour traffic, mind you. So anyway, so we loaded up. I remember driving there and me still talking through the contractions. It was so bizarre. So I told my husband, like, I don't know if this is true labor. Like with RJ, I knew this is intense, this is labor. I was stopping what I was doing and purposefully breathing through each contraction, timing them. And again, this time a contraction came and I would breathe, but it was a deep breath. It was me still being able to talk. My husband would ask me questions and I would answer him. I was very calm. We arrived at the hospital, got checked in at labor and triage. Anyway, so the nurse checked me and she said, okay, you're at 6. We're going to keep you. Let's get you in a room. So at that point, I had my husband call our doula, Emily. She arrived within like 35, 40 minutes. At this point, by the time I got into my delivery room, it was about 7 o'clock. And I will tell you guys, I am so glad that I had a doula. So Randall and I make a really good birthing team. We understand each other's love languages. He knows that my love language is words of affirmation. So he knows that what I need from him is that you can do it, babe. You've got this. I'm so proud of you. You look beautiful. All those words of affirmation is what I needed. But my doula's job was to kind of be, I called her our bouncer. Because when the nurses came in and they were asking just all these questions, my doula was there to intercept them and be like, this is what you need to do. This is her birth plan. This is what she wants. This is don't do that. No, you can't. Yes, you can. Just all those things. She took all of that off of our plate, which I loved. And it's important to know that our doula, Emily, was phenomenal. Not once did she come between my husband and I. Was not her role. Her role was there to support both of us in us receiving the birth that we wanted for our daughter. And she did that beautifully. She also did photos throughout the labor and the delivery. And if at any time there was a question that was asked that my husband didn't understand or I didn't understand, then Emily, our doula, would explain it to both of us, or she would ask more questions from the medical team. If you take any sort of birthing class, they will tell you that lying down just defeats the whole purpose of trying to move the baby down. So they had a birthing ball in there, which I was so grateful for. So the entire time I sat on the birthing ball with my arms kind of on the edge of the bed, and I would just kind of bounce and move my hips kind of in a circular motion. And I would do that through the contractions and in between contractions. Now, what I also want to say is I think what made this birth so much better than my birth with with RJ, was with each contraction, I was very, very, very mindful of my breathing. So instead of just breathing in and breathing out, I did this very intense kind of hum breathing. So when I could feel a contraction building up, I would just go, and I know that sounds silly, but I would do that the entire contraction, take a breath in between if I needed to, because a 1 minute contraction is a long time to hum. And then as the contraction was coming back down, I would take a breath and kind of hum the rest the way out. I cannot tell you guys what a difference that made. Now, I know that there are some studies saying that the actual breathing and the humming relaxes your body. It releases some of the endorphins, the prolactin, everything that plays into a very successful unmedicated birth. It's important for. So yeah, it sounds silly. I didn't care. It worked. I did a lot of humming. The other thing I did too is I had a playlist this time on my phone of just some of the very important worship songs that I love, things that speak to my heart, things that empower me, things that just speak truth and life into me, which I needed at that point. So my doula was a Christian too. And so what I loved is she would sing with the songs, not like karaoke sing, but just very soft, very comforting, would just sing with the songs. My husband, as I was bouncing on the ball, my husband would rub my shoulders, or at one point my back labor got pretty intense. And him and Emily both had each side of my hips. And so they were both massaging my hips. And Emily was just this very calming presence, just there, assisting my husband. Randall was just amazing and providing me the affirmation that I needed to, just being a very good, very loving, very tender birth coach at that point. And then the other thing that I will say is with the humming and the intentional breathing, I was extremely thirsty. And so I made it a point, actually, my husband made it a point where after every contraction, I would take a few sips of water. With that came the bladder. Because as the baby is moving into the birth canal, the baby's pressing on your bladder. So the baby is moving through, and then there's your little bladder that the baby is pressing on. So you have to go pee a lot. So I felt like I was constantly getting up to go use the restroom, to go empty my bladder. Now remember, I was at a 6 when they checked me in at about 6:30. At about 7:30, is when my back labor started. It was very intense, going to the bathroom a lot, purposeful breathing. I zoned out. I was no longer paying attention to anybody. I was listening to my husband. I was listening to my music. I was listening to my doula. Nothing else mattered. I was focusing on my body, knowing what my body was doing at that phase. Just being aware of what the pains were that I'm feeling. So at one point, I went up to go to the bathroom. And as I got up to go wash my hands, I could feel my water starting to break. And it wasn't a gush. It was just this trickle that's not the same trickle as peeing. It's just a very different trickle. And then with that came the intense urge to push. And so I yelled for my doula. My poor husband is standing right there, but I yelled for doula. I'm like, Emily, I need to push. And so she looked at me and she's like, your husband's right there. He's got this. You've got this. You're doing great. And so so I had to walk from the in-room bathroom to my bed, which was a very weird experience because at that point I was crowning. And when you're walking, you're trying to shuffle to the bed, but you're crowning. It's not a pleasant feeling. So I got to the edge of the bed. The midwife came in. She's trying to check me, and everybody's like, get on the bed, get on the bed. Well, I'm 5'1", and I have a baby crowning, and you want me to lift my legs to get on the bed? That's not happening. I'm sorry. It is not happening. Oh, goodness. So God bless my husband and doula. They both like grabbed an arm and a leg and picked me up and kind of like positioned me onto the bed. And the midwife checked me and she's like, you're ready. Let's do this. So it was about 4 or 5 just deep breaths, full body pushes, and my baby was born. And it was baby Faith. We did not know the gender. So she was born 6 pounds, 3 ounces. She was tiny. So just an absolute amazing experience. As soon as she was birthed, we had what they call that golden hour. I also wanted delayed cord clamping. But we're also doing cord blood and cord tissue banking. So it was this period where I was delivering the afterbirth, but still had Faith on my chest. About 30 minutes after I had delivered the afterbirth, and they had delivered the cord blood. They had pulled the cord blood out of the umbilical cord. They clamped it. They got the cord tissue. They shipped that off to the lab. And then my husband actually cut the cord. I think I got all that out of order. But anyway, so we were in the room, just kind of waiting for our recovery room to open up. But yeah, that is our birth story. Now, if there are some tips that I can give other moms who want to do unmedicated births, is you need to prepare yourself, not just physically, but I think mentally and emotionally. Those are your biggest challenges. So you need to prepare yourself for those. Because when you're in labor, that fight or flight instinct is so intense. And I have a dear friend, and her flight instinct, when she goes in labor, it's her flight instinct. She wants to just leave. She's like, I don't care. I don't care if I'm crowning. I want to leave. I want to go home. I don't want to do this. Obviously, that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. Other people, they fight. They will fight it, and that causes them to tense up, and that causes more pain. It causes the screaming, the feelings of anxiousness, the being scared, being angry. And those are all things that I felt with my first labor, unmedicated labor, my labor with RJ. So prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, and then physically as well. Physically, things I did was I ate dates. I drank elderberry, red raspberry leaf tea. Evening primrose oil was something I did on a daily basis as well. I did a lot of birthing ball exercises. I did a lot of yoga poses. We walked a lot. Being intimate with your partner is super important as well. It just not only helps with those good endomorphins, getting the hormones, but it also helps to soften your cervix as well. So there are a ton of things that you can do to assist your body to prepare for childbirth, medicated and unmedicated. The other super important thing, especially if you are going to do an unmedicated birth, and this is kind of where the Bradley birth method comes in, is your birth coach. So even if you have a doula, which is great, your birth coach, whether it is a spouse, a friend, a parent, a sibling, I don't care. Your birth coach, you need to have a very, very good communication and relationship with. Communication is key because my husband's natural love language is humor. And because of the line of work he is in, it's a very dry, very dark humor. My love language is words of affirmation. So the two, it's oil and water. But just being able to communicate with him and say, hey, this is what I'm going to need from you when I am in labor. This is what I need to hear. This is what I need you to do. If this happens, here's what I need you to do and how to respond to that. And then also trusting each other enough to know that it is going to be okay. Because there are going to be phases in your labor and in your birth journey where there's going to be unknowns. But you need to trust each other enough to know that no matter what decision the other one makes, it's made with the best of intentions and it's made with love. So trust is huge. It's very, very big. And someone's fussy. Anyway, the other tip and trick I can recommend for anybody out there. My third tip for an unmedicated birth is to know your options. If you don't know your options, there are no options. In the hospital, I mean, even me who was prepared, and this was my second unmedicated birth, there were still questions that I was asked that still caught me off guard. During the delivery of the afterbirth, they asked me if I wanted Pitocin, which caught me off guard. Like, no, I already delivered the baby and I didn't want a medicated birth. Why would I want Pitocin now? And it had to do with the bleeding, basically. But regardless, if you don't know what your options are, then you don't know what you can or cannot do. So it is very important. I always tell everybody, yes, your hospital offers birthing classes. Always take a birthing class outside of the hospital because you will hear so many options and so much information that will just help you in making the best decision for you, your family, and your baby. So that's it. That is our birth story. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them below and I will be sure to answer them.